Hello everyone, welcome back to the Green Man channel for my first video in a while, which is actually talking about a book. I'm going to be doing a book review of the latest book I've read, which I just bought at the weekend and have read through very, very quickly because I really enjoyed it. Felt compelled to talk about this one. So I found it kind of fascinating at just how relatable the book was in many ways. And it's a modern fiction book. It's called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and it has pretty strong sci-fi and fantasy elements. In fact, the idea of the Midnight Library itself is something of one of the key sci-fi elements, somewhere where someone goes and they can sort of see how their lives may have turned out differently had they made different choices. In this case, people's choices, or this character's choices, represented by different books in this library. And when they open a book, or when this character called Nora Seed, she opens a book, she can place herself in a different life where she made a different choice. Kind of get the vibes of something like a film, maybe like Sliding Doors, or It's a Wonderful Life, even, where you have the guardian angel in that film, and how things would be different where the main character in that film hasn't lived at all. And this is kind of almost like the same sort of idea, but almost in reverse. This is like, well, what if this person lived their life differently? How would it be different? It's all about that kind of appreciating what you have. It's a life-affirming book. It's really heartwarming. The kind of thing you might actually want to read if you're feeling pretty down. I think it's really an enjoyable, compelling, effective read, and I think it's very well realised. I think the strength of this book actually is just how well realised Nora Seed and her regrets and the characters that she has been involved with in her root life, this is what they call it, her original life, is the strength of this story, really, because in the first part of the book you kind of get these different parts of her root life and how she's unhappy and how she has these kind of core regrets, if you like. Then in the next part of the book is when after she leaves a suicide note saying she's going to kill herself effectively, she ends up in this midnight library place, which I suppose could be seen as a place between life and death, where she is, suddenly with this character called Mrs. Elm, and she's making, she's suddenly faced with this book of regrets, where she can see what would have happened had she done certain things differently. And so we start with her key regrets, her kind of main regrets that she has. And I'd say there are 4 or 5 of these that we go through life, where she had she got married to this guy called Dan. There's a life where she was a successful swimmer. She was successful in a band with her brother. There was a life where she was a glaciologist. There was another big one as well, where she went to Australia with her friend, and she sees how all these different lives could have turned out. I won't spoil it all by saying what happens in each of those different lives, but it really is just so well. There's something really well realised and modern about this book, even though this is recycling the whole kind of parallel universe time travel like idea that we've seen so much in sci-fi. It did remind me a bit in places of the 5 people you meet in heaven, just the sort of the comforting nature of this book and the concept of that as well, with that you meet 5 people in heaven who kind of make you realise why certain things happened in your life, or that sort of an idea feels like it's also very much at the heart of the Midnight Library, looking back and maybe realising that things aren't so bad as you might think. A really good book for somebody perhaps that thinks in a very negative way, or often, maybe even, as well as saying, maybe it's a good book for people who feel very down or even depressed. I think it's just quite a subtly understated, powerful little book here that Matt Haig has written. There are many moments. So get down into my sort of my favourite moments of this book now. There was a whole chapter which I thought was incredibly touching and heartwarming, which was a chapter called A Pearl in the Shell, which is where Nora C gets to know kind of a daughter that she didn't have in her original life, but she's had this daughter with this guy called Ash, and she's trying to learn more about herself in this life by talking to this daughter of hers that's in this life. And the way her daughter explains things to her is just wonderful. I mean, when she's talking about who her dad is, who Nora's husband is, he's a surgeon, and she says, basically, to describe him as a surgeon, she simply says, when Nora asks her what does her dad do, she just says he cuts people. Obviously, she means he's a surgeon. And there's just moments like that are really, really good in this book. Some great quotes as well, I think. Page 211, there's a really lovely bit which comes to mind, which is, you didn't have to enjoy every aspect of each life to keep having the option of experiencing them. You just had to never give up on the idea that there would be a life somewhere that could be enjoyed. So again, this kind of revisiting this idea that sometimes it's about just accepting maybe the things that haven't gone so well in your life, or the things you regret, and learning to live in the here and now. I get that kind of a message from the author, particularly as this book draws towards its end. It feels like that's the kind of message that he's going for, and it's just a nice positive message for a book that begins in a very, very dark way. I did think that by the time I got to about page 25, I was thinking, God, is this going to be a seriously dark and depressing book? But it becomes quite the opposite of that. I think personally, the way that the regrets, the imaginings of these different lives of Nora Seed comes to the fore as you read through the book, and as you actually realise that she is regretful, but she doesn't want to die. She acted, in spite of the way the story starts, in spite of her seeming wish to die, and the fact she's just basically just really, really feeling down, is in a terrible moment in her life. But that she learns through the Midnight Library that actually her regrets just make up a part of who she is, and that she kind of learns to accept things as they are, really, by the time she's seen all these other possibilities. And it's really fascinating how the author kind of draws you into that picture as you reach the book's end, and makes you relate. As I say, it's a very relatable book, very enjoyable, good for I'd say a pretty quick read. Got nothing much to do of an evening or a weekend, you probably read through it pretty quickly. Easy read. I don't really have that as a criticism, though. I think the easy nature of this book, and that it is very easy to read, just makes it that bit more kind of, I think, engaging. I mean, if you want something really, really descriptive and more complex and involved, sure, there are plenty of other sci-fi books that will do that for you and everything. But I really liked this book, and yeah, it's kind of as Jodie Picoult says, it's a wonderful life of the modern age kind of thing. Maybe that's a bit cheesy for you. I appreciate probably most of my subscribers on my channel are metalheads into really like extreme kind of music and everything, so doing a big video like this might come as something out of the ordinary, but I'm into all sorts of things, and I don't restrict my interests in my life because I just like to experience, and indulge in everything that's out there as much as possible, because as the book suggests in many places, we have one root life, so make the most of it. Take care, everybody. See you next time.